But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. And you see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, with the most convenient definitions. But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain and an athlete
And a basket case. A princess.
and a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
In Book 2 of The Extraordinary Adventures of the Athena Club, we follow Mary Jackal and the other daughters of literature's mad scientist as they traverse across late 19th century Europe. After the Athena Club receives a telegram saying Lucinda Van Helsing has been kidnapped. They must make haste to find her before something horrible happens. While the previous book had many familiar Gothic tales it weaves into the narrative, the sequel, while twice as long, mainly concerns itself with three Gothic stories: Bram Stoker's Dracula, Carmilla, vampire lesbian story even older than Dracula, and She. I'll be honest, when I first read this series, I had only heard of Dracula. Also, I'd like to mention that while these are based on classic Gothic literature, none of them are one-for-one retellings. Every story has been altered and changed to suit the story that Goss was trying to tell. The dates each story is set in, for example, was changed to help bring the characters into the same sphere to interact in, or the way that science is used to explain the mysterious parts of their abilities in the actual story. Most authors attribute it to supernatural means like magic, ghost, or even just straight up God. For as much effort as it takes to weave these stories together, I personally think Goss did a great job. The way the story is told and the way the characters are written almost makes you believe this all really happened.
Calling all the monsters, calling all the monsters, calling all the monsters.
We begin with an epigraph that reads, "At the end of the world, they encountered monsters," with Mary interrupting to say Budapest is far from the end of the world. Volume 1, From London to Vienna. Catherine begins the story with Lucinda Van Helsing perspective, nervous and paranoid because she knows they are coming for her. She feels her teeth, which have grown sharper, and awaits the maid to bring her food. Moments later, when said maid arrives, Lucinda is gone. Mary interrupts to say they should begin with them, not Lucinda, and Catherine tells her, "Why are you telling me how to write this book?" I love their interaction. So Catherine changes the tale to begin with the Athena Club meeting on a warm August day. Diana was being whiny because she has to stay because Mary wants her to focus on her studies and stay behind. She's bringing Justine because she speaks French and some German, while Catherine has the benefit of being able to bite people. Mary and Diana are quarreling. Beatrice is soaking in the sunlight. Justine is sitting on the floor because chairs make her feel scrunched up. And Catherine is standing by the fireplace in a men's suit, looking dashing as ever. Kat's off to meet with Joe Abernathy, who is their inside informant in the going on at Purfleet Asylum. She goes to meet with him every fortnight, which is like 2 weeks. Kat quickly catches us up on the events of the first book, the experiments to create girl monsters, the murders, and the brief recap of each of the Athena Club members. Beatrice Rappaccini is sitting by the open window so her poisonous fumes do not hurt the others. Kat says she would make the perfect romantic heroine, but Beatrice is too modern for such things. Mary Jackal is dressed in a walking suit to go to 221B Baker Street and assist Sherlock Holmes. Diana Hyde is on the couch, still in her pajamas, playing with Alpha the cat. They're sisters, daughters of the same father in different phases of his life. Dr. Jackal, the chemist, and Mr. Hyde, the Catherine Moreau, our author, made from a puma turned woman by Dr. Moreau on his island in the South Sea. And Justine Frankenstein, already in a painting smock, even though she is as strong as an ox, she is the gentlest of them all. As Alice begins clearing away the dishes, Beatrice asks if it's okay that she stays behind, and Mary says it is because she needs Beatrice to protect Alice and Mrs. Poole, as well as keep an eye on Diana. Mary plans to ask Sherlock for an advance on their trip to help Lucinda, and request a holiday because they will be gone for a while. She wishes Kat luck as Mary begins to leave. Kat plans to bring Charlie, not Charles, I kept calling him the wrong name the entire time, because they haven't heard anything in 3 months from the Alchemical Society.
That's weird.
Mrs. Poole helps Mary to get ready, saying she looks like a proper lady. Mary makes sure she has her latchkey, which Mrs. Poole feels is not proper for a lady, but there are 5 of the girls. They need keys to get into their own house. As Mary leaves, she stops to wipe a smudge off the new plaque on the house that reads The Athena Club. As she thinks about all she has been through since the death of her mother, Catherine goes on about how the women from the murders, all from the Magdalene Society, all deserve better than the treatment they received at this society. Women who engage in sex work are often ignored by society at best and seen as expendable at worst. As Mary stops to smell a rose, she sees it's a newer hybrid, and in the middle, it's a beetle eating away at it.
I think it's a metaphor.
Mrs. Hudson lets Mary into 221B Baker Street. Mary gives her a jam recipe from Mrs. Poole, as Mrs. Hudson tells her she has a pair of stockings she knitted for Alice. Mary says she will pick it up on her way out as she goes to see the detective duo. As she enters the room, she thinks about the adventures she has joined Holmes and Watson on, only to be mentioned in their stories as a lady. She is a bit resentful, but also knows being mentioned directly in his books would be unladylike. In their room, Holmes and Watson are seated among the usual mess of scientific instruments. Holmes tells Mary how they missed her this weekend for the Lydgate murder case. They're in a jolly mood and quickly notice Mary has something to share. She begins by telling them about her former governess, Miss Wilhelmina Murray. Miss Murray was her governess until Mary was 14, when she had to let her go because she couldn't afford her at the time. Plus, Miss Murray found a position in the north at a prestigious girls' school. After sending her a letter 3 months ago, she finally got a response, which was another letter from Lucinda Van Helsing, whose mother was locked in an asylum in Vienna. The detective duo realized the Alchemical Society is back to its experiments. When Mary says she waited a week to bring the news to them, Holmes voices his displeasure, but she tells him no, it was her decision. He only cares to prevent further crime by the society, while the Athena Club focuses on the victims like them.
Emotional damage!
Holmes accepts this, but does say he would go with them if he could, but he actually needs to stay in London because his brother Mycroft says something is amiss. Mycroft is a spy, so he usually forwards information to Sherlock. Watson can't go either because he is needed, but Sherlock does say he still has connections in Vienna. He pulls a photograph from a secret drawer and shows Mary a picture of a woman. Her name is Irene Norton Nee Adler. She was a performer who married an ambassador in Vienna and stayed there after he passed. She has connections with both artists and intelligence gathering societies. When Holmes tries leading the conversation to place himself in charge of the rescue, Mary steers her back to work for the day, which includes preparing Sherlock for a lecture on ears. It's in the middle of typing up his dictations that Alice is let in by Mrs. Hudson. She has a telegram for them. Lucinda missing. Can you find and bring her to Budapest? SA annual meeting, September 20 through the 24th. Must convince them to stop experiments. Love, Mina. Mary runs home panicking at all they have to get done with the deadline 3 weeks away. They have to find a girl they had never seen in a city they had never been that didn't even speak English. Mary regrets not leaving sooner, but realistically, they needed time to plan and make arrangements to travel. They weren't supposed to leave for another week even. Holmes catches up and tells her that rushing home won't get her to Vienna any sooner. And they slow down to allow Watson and a limping Alice catch up. Sherlock carries Alice as Watson and Mary talk about Irene. Alice twisted her ankle. She was the former mistress of the King of Bohemia and the love of Sherlock's life, according to Watson, and a rival of his at one point too. They arrive home where Mrs. Poole fetches Beatrice as Watson checks Alice's ankle. He says she sprained it as Justine comes in to tell her their passports have just arrived, but they have yet to start packing. She leaves to put back her art supplies as Beatrice comes into the room. She has the men avert their gaze so that she can check Alice's ankle and wraps it up with an anti-inflammatory medicine that she has made, followed by linen before Alice is carried to her room by Justine. As the rest of the girls, except for Kat, who is still at Purfleet, gather in the living room, Mary tells Sherlock their travel plans. Their passports had fake names to hide their identities: Justin, Mary, and Catherine Frank. Justine was going to disguise herself as a man because her height gives her away anyway. She even cut her hair. They were to travel from London to Dover, then by ferry to Ostend, and a series of trains through Brussels, Frankfurt, Nuremberg, and finally Vienna. They couldn't afford an express train, but Holmes insists they needed to get there quickly, saying he will buy 3 Orient Express tickets instead. He stops talking though when they glare at him, with Watson explaining how Holmes fails to notice how others don't appreciate having their affairs taken care of for them.
Well, I never.
Diana says, in other words, you're the great Sherlock Holmes, so no one tells you when you're being a pain in the arse. Mary says she will have to discuss the option of an express train with the Athena Club. Mrs. Poole comes in with tea and sandwiches, with Diana asking for jam tarts and offering to help as she follows the housekeeper into the kitchen. She only went because Mrs. Poole gives her jam tarts to keep her quiet, but she also gives some to Alice. Diana responds by calling Alice insipid, which she says in Latin insulsus, which means unsalted. Alice is unsalted. Catherine arrives wearing a lavender dress and straw hat. She says she fell into a bush and that she has learned Prendick is still alive and meeting with Dr. Stewart, so she has to stay because they have a meeting scheduled in Soho. Charlie's there too, and he goes to have tea with Diana in the kitchen. Kat sits down to tell them what had happened. Mrs. Poole interrupts to say she had a hell of a time trying to return the lavender dress to the woman from Purfleet who it belonged to. So we rewind to the morning as Kat and Charlie hail a cab to Fenchurch Street Station. The cabbie calls Charlie an Arab, which was an insult at the time.
You can excuse racism.
Beatrice interrupts to say she doesn't understand why it's an insult considering the Islamic golden age of scientific discovery led by Arabic scientists. Many modern discoveries would not be possible without their contributions, but Kat says she wasn't about to argue that with the cabbie. You gotta know when to pick your battle, sadly. On the train ride, Kat instructs Charlie to speak to the local Purfleet boys to see what they know. Then she goes into how kids like Charlie, homeless youth, are singled out by the penal system unjustly so.
No. He's got a point.
On the train, Charlie has suggested stealing some of Abernathy's letters, but Kat says no, it'll raise too much suspicion. Charlie then asks if she really is a puma because Diana told him, but she lies like amazingly. She says yes, allowing him to poke at her teeth. She says Kat could bite like crazy, adding that Diana bites, but she can't do that much damage. In Purfleet, Charlie and Kat in disguise split up. Kat goes around pretending to be a reverend handing out temperance movement leaflets. When she gets to Abernathy's place, Mrs. Abernathy lets him in. And previously, I had said Mrs. Abernathy was his wife, but she is actually his mother. Inside, as Mrs. Abernathy brings out bread, ham, and tea, Joe tells Kat how he saw Prendick meeting with Seward recently. As Kat listens, she has to remind herself to use a fork and knife for the ham, which she finds inefficient. She'd rather just use her teeth and hands. Joe has nothing else, aside from Prendick and Seward discussing a meeting soon. Kat thinks of how she can find out when the meeting is as Mrs. Abernathy shows Charlie in. He spoke to some locals and found out that Seward is away to speak with the trustee and will be out for several hours, so Charlie brought her an inmate's dress. Abernathy wonders who Seward could be meeting with, thinking of Lord Godalming or Dr. Raymond, which can't be a coincidence of names when it comes to Mrs. Raymond, perhaps a wife of his.
Coincidence? I think not!
Godalming, on the other hand, is Arthur Holmwood from Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the book, he was Lucy Westenra's fiancé. I'm sure his name is also no accident.
Coincidence? I think not!
Kat asks Joe how she could get into Seward's office and asks him to show her to the crumbling home next door to the asylum, Carfax House. On the way, Joe tells her how the original Carfax family died off and some foreign nobleman bought it but never fixed it up. She changes and climbs the broken wall into the asylum where she meets two women, Lavinia, who murdered her husband, and Florence, who has selective mutism, which is usually the result of trauma, according to Mary. The women are kind and tell her to get some water, so Kat heads inside and sneaks up to John Seward's office. She uses her hairpins to break into the room. Diana had taught her how to pick locks. Inside, it's neat and organized, but it still takes her a moment to find his diary with appointments. She sees he was summoned recently by a Dr. R, who could be Dr. Raymond. She then sees his meeting with Prendick recently, as well as the scheduled Soho meeting a week from today. She skims the rest of the journal and sees another scheduled appointment for the last week of September, SA in Budapest, which we know to be the meeting with Miss Murray mentioned in the telegram. She searches the rest of the room for more information. She even finds a file on Richard Matthew Renfield, but it's empty, probably emptied by Dr. Seward. As she tries to unlock a drawer, wishing Diana was there to help, the lock clicks, but not in the drawer. In walk Seward, and Catherine, with her cat-like grace, jumps up, shoving the chair back, and jumps out the window.
Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind?
She lands on her back in an azalea bush and scrambles to get up and keep running. She discards the dress, knowing they'll be looking for a woman wearing that color. She makes her way to the back wall as the asylum is alerted, running into Charlie, who gives her the satchel containing her disguise. As she puts it on, Kat tells him how she messed up because she trusted Seward to stick to his schedule and didn't trust her senses. She told Charlie to never trust a man. To never trust a man to do what he's going to do. to which he replies, "I never do, miss."
Right? Guys are the worst.
They make their way through the Carfax estate to the front gate, but stop as they see a cop and hear voices. The others have learned she was in disguise and say it was a man who broke in. Lavinia gave them her description but lied to them, saying Kat had heterochromia, she doesn't, and had a mustache, she also doesn't. Mrs. Poole interrupts to say she had asked around and learned Lavinia had killed her husband because for 20 years he never spoke to her at breakfast. He said it distracted him from his papers. One day, he tells her the eggs aren't cooked all the way, and she should do a better job at managing the staff. She stabbed him with a carving knife. 20 years of forced silence. And he says that.
Right? Guys are the worst.
As Catherine and Charlie think of what to do, Kat realizes it's Monday. English folk usually do their laundry on Monday. So the plan is to switch disguises now that the cops are out on the lookout for her reverend costume. They go through several backyards to find the clothing necessary for Kat, and she changes back into the Carfax woods. The clothes are ill-fitting, the lavender is too long, but Charlie gets her a straw hat from a scarecrow, and he stole a melon too, which they share and eat. The disguise is convincing. When one of the asylum workers questions her, she puts on her sweetest voice. They make it past the cops too and slip out of town without an issue. When Kat complains that a cabbie wouldn't stop for them because of her fuck-ass dress, she says she almost considered going anarchist. Mrs. Poole interrupts to say she supports the monarchy, which, ew, cringe. Kat responds by saying she isn't considering blowing up the Houses of Parliament, at least not yet. Catherine finishes her story and Mary catches her up on the telegram as Mrs. Poole brings in tea and refreshments. Beatrice joins them. She will stay back and hold on the fort, although she feels she isn't contributing like the others. Mary tells her she is, not just by protecting, but also through keeping them connected and up to date. The girls agree to take Holmes's tickets on the Orient and plan to leave in the next few days. As Mary thinks about the money to withdraw and the clothing to buy, Catherine informs the audience how miles away Lucinda Van Helsing is locked in a padded cell and screaming.
Screaming! Screaming!
On the English Channel, as Mary stares down at the water, she thinks about the mad dash to prepare for the journey for the last few days. How she not only had to withdraw money, but also learn conversion rates, francs and centimes for France, kroner and hellers for Hungary, although they still use the old florins and kreuzers sometimes. This was long before the euro was standardized in the European Union. Holmes had told her that Irene Norton had responded and to meet her in Vienna at her apartment. He had gotten a hackney carriage to take them to the train station to Dover, and their goodbye was a bit sad. It would be a month before they could return home. Diana refused to speak to them, upset they were leaving her behind. Mary thinks about the train ride to Vienna from Paris and all the times she has to remember as she goes to check on Justine, who is seasick. As she fights to walk across the deck of the ship, she sees a familiar figure, and who else is it? It's Diana.
Surprise, mother.
Diana's like, "Why are you surprised? You should know me by now," which is hilarious because Mary admits she is right, even though she is pissed. She even interrupts the story to say someone should have drowned Diana at birth. Mary can be so dark, embracing her inner monster. I love it. Diana demands that Diana go home when they get to Calais, but her sister refuses, threatening to run away to America. Mary admits defeat, knowing they have no choice but to keep going to Vienna. They go speak with Justine below deck, telling her how Diana hung over their carriage and snuck onto the train to Dover and the ferry. In Calais, as their luggage is taken to the Gate Maritime to be put on the train, they stop at the local telegraph office where a message is already waiting for Mary Frank, her cover name. It's from Holmes saying he knows Diana's with them and he will let Mrs. Poole know.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
They buy a ticket for Diana to go to Paris, but they'll have to sort out the Orient Express issue when they get there. On the train, the girls eat and Diana falls asleep. Mary asks Justine how the German is going as she studies a phrase book. Justine says she feels inadequate, and Mary thinks how Justine would say that even if she were fluent. Justine has a hard time being confident in herself and not downplaying her achievements. Mary also falls asleep until they reach Amiens, where an elderly French woman named Madame Corbeau boards a train. She gives them some cookies and knits a sock until they get to Paris. As Catherine writes about how beautiful Paris is, each of the girls chimes in with how London, France, or Geneva are very beautiful cities too. They arrive in Paris at the Gare du Nord, and Justine grabs their luggage, saying they'll need to hire a porter, otherwise her carrying the trunk will raise eyebrows. As they walk to the Gare de l'Est, Diana mentions how hungry she is as Justine tells Mary that the Frenchwoman thought Diana was her son. On the line at the Gare de l'Est, Mary spots two university students from the previous train ride. When she gets to the front, she is surprised to learn Sherlock went ahead and got a ticket for Diana as well. Mary is a bit annoyed, if thankful. As they load the luggage onto the train, Mary realizes she will have to get a change of clothes for Diana because her ticket is for a miss and she's in her boy's clothes. They are told of a shop nearby by a flower seller girl, and Mademoiselle Nicolette helps them get two dresses for Diana. The clothes are so frilly and high femme that Diana threatens to kill Mary and Justine in their sleep.
I'll get you, and I'll look like a bloody accident.
They stop for lunch at a restaurant where Diana has escargot.
Escargot and a glass of Chablis.
Mary orders an omelet and Justine has some onion soup. Then they make their way to the train station again to board. Mary and Diana are bunking together for the journey on the Orient Express and Justine, as Justin is bunking within Monsieur Waldman. Waldman was the mentor of Victor Frankenstein, but obviously this isn't him because that guy died a century ago. Right?
Sure about that? You sure about that?
They pile into Mary and Diana's cabin to unpack their clothes for the evening, and Justine hands Mary her pistol. The porter, Mitchell, comes by to tell them they're serving dessert and coffee in the dining car, so they go while Justine introduces themselves to Waldman in their cabin. While Diana has some chocolate cake and Mary drinks some oolong tea, she thinks about how easily Diana seems to have no worries or get tired. Diana interrupts to say she does get tired. She gets tired of Mary telling her what to do. The sibling energy is strong between these two. Anxiety-ridden older sibling and extrovert younger sibling, it's so perfect. Justine, as Justin, joins them with her bunkmate Heinrich Waldman. He is Swiss and Justine told him she studied and learned French there. Waldman is studying at Ingolstadt and is visiting a museum in Vienna. He was traveling with another university student but he got sick. Justine and Waldman talk Swiss politics and philosophy, and Mary realizes Diana is missing as their porter comes to tell them that their beds are ready. Diana is found talking with a woman in Mauve named Duchess Iphigenie. Mary apologizes and says it's time for Diana to go to bed. As she leads her sister back to the cabin, she thinks about how most of the women are retiring for the evening and hates how her body betrays her because she is tired, but she feels like she is also withdrawing as a woman. Beatrice interrupts to rant about the importance of less restrictive clothing for women. And when she mentions birth control, Catherine warns her that could get their book banned. Beatrice says that's the problem. She should be able to talk about such things without worrying about being banned or censored.
Wait, is this a fucking play about us?
After that grim reminder of our current reality, Mary and Diana change into their nightgowns and go to sleep. Mary sleeps with a pistol, unloaded of course, under her pillow, and Justine stays up talking with Waldman, first about Hungarian politics, then about some philosopher named Leibniz? At breakfast the next day, Waldman joined them again, this time talking with Mary more. He asks about England and such before telling her how he is studying epidemiology, the study of diseases and their spread. As the adults talk, Diana runs off again. Mary finds her playing a card game with a Turkish merchant, a Viennese chocolatier, and the Duchess again. Diana had already won 10 francs. Apparently, she stole the money to gamble with from Mary. Waldman had left Justine and Mary reluctantly, and Mary reluctantly allowed Diana to go back to her card game. Mary does a lot reluctantly. She's just like me for real. At dinner, joined again by Waldman, they discuss art, which leaves Mary feeling not up to par. She promises to herself to read more important books once things have settled. Kat interrupts to say most important books aren't worth reading. Mary goes to find Diana. She's in the luggage car arm wrestling with the porter. She drags her sister off and runs into Waldman, who she is forward with and just thanks for the pleasant evening. He asks her to keep in contact in Vienna, and she plays it off because of their mission. He kisses her hand and says goodnight.
Oh my, so schnitzel! You're naughty, naughty boy. Yo! Whoa!
Diana calls her an idiot before falling asleep. The next day is much of the same, although Waldman doesn't show as much interest as Mary would have liked, so she plans to give him her address in London. As the train arrives at the Westbahnhof in Vienna, Justine quickly comes to Mary and drags her along by the arm.
What's all the hubbub, Puff?
A man approaches. He was sent by Frau Norton on their behalf. He says there is a cab out front. Justine helps carry their luggage to the cab and they board as Mary sees Waldman looking around on the platform. Justine admits that she went snooping through Waldman's things and found an empty envelope with the seal of the Alchemical Society. Mary interrupts to say she felt like an idiot for swooning over this man. Diana does call her an idiot.
You stupid bitch!
At Irene Norton's place in the morning, they enjoy tea and crepes as they recount their travels to Irene. They're unsure if anyone else who they met was also a member of the Alchemical Society. They had arrived late the night before when Irene told them she had located Lucinda. Irene says Lucinda is being held at the Maria Theresa Krankenhaus, an asylum for criminals and those who may do harm to themselves. The girls interrupt to say how the Alchemical Society loves locking folks up in the asylum. Diana says it must be easier to get rid of people that way. Irene tells them that she's from New Jersey and was a famous opera singer before marrying. Her husband died and she didn't move back to America afterwards. She also says that she sent a telegram to Mrs. Poole, letting the housekeeper know not to respond unless absolutely necessary, but updating her about their whereabouts. After Irene explains how an artist painted her as a muse, she also says the rising nationalism and anti-Semitism in Europe is worrying her for the future of Europe.
Hint, hint.
Irene calls for Greta to join them as she unrolls a scroll of paper and discusses the layout of the Krankenhaus. She says she has a friend who is laying the groundwork for the future of psychology. He helped her overcome her grief after her husband died. Greta, who Mary mistakes for a boy, tells them that Lucinda is on the third floor of the building. Irene says Sigmund, as in Freud, never heard of Lucinda because he doesn't have access to the third floor as patients. Greta describes the layout of the building. The second floor is for private patients, and the third is for criminals. There are bars on the window, and the right wing is for men, and the left is for women. On the third floor, both wings are always locked. Security guards the front and back entrances to the building, and there is a high wall surrounding it. Greta doesn't think the rescue mission is possible. Greta asks about other business, and Irene says they will discuss it when the other girls arrive.
What's that supposed to mean?
Greta leaves to sleep. Irene wonders how they are going to pull off a prison break for Lucinda. She says how the Van Helsings moved to Vienna outside the Ringstrasse about a year ago after Mrs. Van Helsing was admitted to the same asylum. She died just a few days before Lucinda was taken by some men and wound up at the Krankenhaus. Mary asks whether Justine could disguise herself as a priest, maybe sneak Lucinda out through a coffin. Justine points out all the holes in her plan. Diana has had enough and yells to get their attention. She should be the one to go undercover in the asylum. Sigmund has the capability to admit patients to the second floor, and we all know Diana is good at lockpicking. Irene challenges her to show her skill and asks Diana to come along. She leads the girls to a secret room behind a painting. It is a room full of books, files, and a wall of weapons. Irene pulls out 20 locks, old and new, and says the first to unlock 10 wins. Diana is to go up against Hannah, Greta's sister. Irene says Hannah is the best lockpicker she knows, and Diana says as if, taking the bait. They're given a hairpin each, and Irene starts the timer. Diana wins, of course, 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Hannah invites Diana to hang out with her and her sister. Diana asks for boy clothes that Greta was seen wearing. Mary and Justine stay behind to speak with Irene, who thinks Diana is best suited for the role in the mission. But she asks if Mary is okay with letting her sister do this mission for them. And Justine asks for an explanation for her and Mary regarding the room and Irene's useful set of skills. Irene tells them how she was recruited by the American government to observe the goings on in Europe. She doesn't say she's a spy, but we know she's a spy. That's how she wound up with the King of Bohemia. She quickly moves the conversation along, though, and asks Mary if she thinks Diana can do this mission. Irene plans to ask Freud to get Diana in and give her 3 days to make contact. Reluctantly, Mary agrees after some debate with Justine. Irene then uses her telephone, a modern invention Mary had never seen in person, to contact Freud and dismisses the girls. When they leave the secret room, Justine realizes she misplaced her pocket watch. She says wearing men's clothing comes with so many rituals. Mary says the same about women's clothing. They're just used to it. When they check the living room for the watch, Mary sees a copy of the modern Prometheus and realizes Waldman is a descendant of Victor Frankenstein's teacher at university.
Thank you, Catherine Obvious.
As Mary describes how she has felt all out of sorts since leaving home, Justine tells her the other girls have lost their homes already. This is Mary's first time away from her home. Irene comes in to tell her that she too went through a similar feeling when she left New Jersey for the first time, and then again when she left to Europe. Irene then invites them into the parlor and calls for Greta, Hannah, and Diana. The sisters are in maid's uniforms and Diana is in Greta's boys' clothes from earlier. Irene breaks down their situation. Sigmund wants to speak with Diana to ensure she can play a convincing mental patient. Diana will take her with Hannah once Diana changes back into girls' clothes. It's easier to sell hysteria as a woman, unfortunately, at this time. Justine and Greta will scout out the area surrounding the Krankenhaus for a place to observe Diana from the outside. Back in London, Mrs. Poole received a telegram from Irene, although the cats chewed it up a bit first. Kat is immediately on high alert for suspicious activity now. She has the meeting between Prendick and Seward to get to later when Atlas, the strongman from the circus, arrives. Kat hadn't been back since she had to flee with Justine months ago. Atlas, or Matthew, is there to drop off the rest of Kat and Justine's pay for the circus. Apparently, he has a crush on Justine and is a gentle soul who can sew really well apparently and likes to write poetry. Atlas tells Kat about how Lorenzo's circus was going to tour in Europe, at least to Paris, with options open for Berlin. He wishes they would go with them, and Catherine breaks it to Atlas that Justine has been through a lot. She has had her heart broken years ago and may need more time to heal, but she tells him not to give up, for he is a good, kind man who she thinks Justine deserves. She tells him to bring flowers when Justine returns. She likes flowers. He leaves and Alice comes to talk to Kat. Beatrice had told Alice she wasn't going to join Kat on her adventure, so Alice offers to go with Catherine instead. Catherine asked Alice if she's sure, because she had been adamant that she wasn't going to go on any more in dangerous adventures. But Alice says it feels like the right thing to do, and Kat shouldn't go alone.
You know what that is? It's gross.
Mary interrupts the story to say Alice didn't have to do that, and Alice responds that she is glad she did, despite what happened afterwards. Alice and Kat head out after 3 p.m., passing one of Holmes's Baker Street regular kids, keeping a lookout for the detective, Jimmy Bucket. Kat is also on high alert. The two girls, both dressed as men, catch an omnibus from Piccadilly Circus to get to Soho. They arrive at Potter's Court, and after trying to find Potter's Lane, Alice asks an old woman, donning a London street accent instead of her usual proper speak. From there, they break into the address and find inside the dilapidated building a fancy gentleman's townhouse. Like, it's way too nice for the neighborhood, let alone the house. But it's dusty, says Alice, meaning it's been empty for a long time. They do some recon, looking for a hiding place to listen from. It's again Alice who points out the dumbwaiter in the office room that they can use to listen from. They make their way to the basement kitchen and use the dumbwaiter's shaft to listen, and they can use a pantry to hide in if they must. A bit after 5, they hear the voices of men arriving upstairs. Seward and Prendick are talking, and Kat can hear them clearly, but makes room for Alice to stick her head into the shaft to hear as well. Kat mentions how she forgets not everyone has her advanced hearing. Diana interrupts to say she can hear almost as well as Kat, and Kat responds that Diana isn't entirely human, and so Diana bites her. Seward tells a Dr. Raymond, who they can hear is also there, that he removed one of the beast men Prendick invented that returned to its menagerie owner. Then he tells Raymond his plan to return the society to London. After the events of the previous book, and even before then, the Society chapter for England was technically shut down. Seward and Van Helsing are going to present at a conference in Budapest to the Society, mostly about a new blood transfusion technique.
So like a blood transfusion.
But also to reopen their chapter and their experiments.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Raymond says that once their Madam President finds out they've been doing unapproved experiments behind her back after the mess the English chapter caused with such experiments, she will not be happy. But Seward says Van Helsing's plan to call for a general membership vote, which supersedes her disapproval. They have a faction in Budapest led by their contact Arminius Vambery, and if they vote no, they plan to force a regime change by force. Uh-oh! Raymond worries about her finding out, but Seward says Hennessy, the previous asylum director, was a coward for trying to snitch to the president. But Seward intercepted his letter and had him being watched. Hennessy went through a lot after Carfax House, the building next door, says Seward. Hennessy wrote a letter to Raymond, which is how he learned about the newest experiments in London. He tries saying, don't they feel anything on their conscience? And Seward brings up that Raymond performed his own experiments 40 years ago on Helen, whoever that is. Raymond brushes it aside, asking why they summoned him in the first place. Seward wants him to be their chairman again and not alert the society. Seward promises him a race of supermen, and Raymond asks what if their experiment with Lucinda fails like the one with Lucy. Seward says it doesn't matter if it succeeds. The principle of the experiment matters, which, like, yikes, way too close to the reality of how expendable women and girls are to many, and have been historically.
Wait, is this fucking play about us?
Seward plans to travel with Prendick to Budapest, where they will check on Lucinda with Van Helsing. He says that she had to be relocated because of a Mrs. Harker trying to interfere. Mrs. Harker was involved in the Carfax affair. Raymond agrees, and Seward tells Prendick he has the Beast Man locked in the cellar. He leaves, finally revealing that this was where the London chapter used to meet when it was active.
Interesting.
In the silence afterward, Catherine asks which Beastman it could be in the coal cellar. Alice isn't sure, but they both recall one escaping when they fought Adam. As they go to check out who it could be, Cat offers to hold hands with Alice, who is rightfully scared. It's the orangutan man, shackled inside the dark coal cellar. Cat tries to free him, but he smells the puma on her and won't let her get close. Just then, Alice grabs Cat and pulls her into a dark corner as Prendick comes downstairs. Seward let him come back to feed the Beast Man, but he still won't free him no matter how sympathetic he is.
Move this man!
As he looks around the room, Cat swears he will see them, but he doesn't for some reason, even though they're in plain sight. As he leaves, Cat wonders why he missed them, knowing his lying ass doesn't have the courage to help them. Alice interrupts to say that Cat is being harsh, but she responds how awful Archibald was treated by these men. While going up the stairs, Archibald throws the half-eaten apple at Prendick, who rushes to leave. Cat tells the mumbling Alice that she can open her eyes. She asks the girl what she was saying, and she tells her that she was trying to pray but forgot, and just kept going, "We're not here, there's nothing here, blah blah blah," that stuff.
Interesting.
Cat wonders if it's possible that Alice did something but brushes it off. Alice decides to go in, thinking her being a primate would help. Archibald speaks, saying he is a 5-man, and Alice says she is one too, convincing him to trust Cat, because 5 fingers. And then Cat shows him that she has surgical scars. Then she is able to get close and pick the lock that shackles him. They walk home. Even with Alice's jacket, Archibald is half naked, so an omnibus is out of the question. Mrs. Poole interrupts to say how welcomed Archibald was, a great help around the house, better than the previous footman. She mentions that the previous footman and his wife are now expecting a baby. As Mary wonders what to gift the child, Mrs. Poole mentions how Mary never cried as a baby even, which now they know why.
Interesting.
Once home, Mrs. Poole has Archibald take a bath and wear Dr. Jackal's old pajamas. Also, they're kind of big on him. Then everyone sits in the parlor, Cat, Beatrice, Mrs. Poole, Alice, who was combing Archibald's hair. It's Alice who figures out that Archie would prefer fruit, like jackfruit and durian, to eat. Mrs. Poole has no idea what any of those are, but does say she has some pears there she was going to make into a compote. She also mentions how fruit isn't popular as a food because it's rough on the digestion. Interesting to note how ideas on health change over time. He does have to learn the hard way that Beatrice is poisonous by her touching him real quick. A lot like a deadly flower, her beauty is a distraction, and he isn't as well educated in the world of humans to understand. He's the one that tells him his name is Archibald. Cat tries to see if he would like Archie, but he looks offended at the idea. He's from the menagerie that was taken, and Cat thinks he looks back at the gilded cage more fondly when he wasn't part human, because she often dreams about being a puma again before the experiments made her, have complex feelings and stuff. When Diana interrupts to say she is always talking about being a puma, Cat calls her a monkey, and Diana says they're all monkeys because Darwin said so, and Mrs. Poole says that it's a heathenish idea.
I assure you that we did in fact evolve from filthy monkey men.
Cat tells Beatrice she has a plan, with the girls explaining that the society in England plans to make themselves immortal gods with their experiments on Lucinda. They agree that Cat and Beatrice need to get to Budapest as quickly as possible, because this new generation of scientists in the English chapter are planning a bloodbath. Alice asks if she should go, but they say she doesn't have any monstrous abilities like they do. Although Cat does ask her to try doing what she did back on Potter Lane. Nothing happens though, and Cat figures it was just Prendick. They're gonna send a telegram to Miss Murray to update her, but realize they're short on funds, even with the money Atlas gave them. They don't want to have to ask Holmes for help because he does get in the way. So Cat comes up with the idea to travel with the circus. That morning, Mrs. Poole comes in to tell Cat that she was right about Alice. When she went to wake Alice that morning, she couldn't find her in her room, and then she just reappeared right in front of her. Cat says she can't be turning invisible because that's impossible and there must be another explanation. The next day, the girls travel to Clerkenwell Green, finding Lorenzo's circus folk lodging there. They are first greeted by Clarence, the Zulu prince, who is actually from Boston. Beatrice interrupts to say that Africa is made up of many cultures and peoples, and Kat adds that Clarence does have a noble demeanor. He's the way he holds himself. When Lorenzo pops in with Atlas, Kat tells him that she has a business proposal and introduces him to Beatrice. He's delighted to see her because they're both Italian. He's from Florence. Kat says they can join him on their tour, but they need to stop in Vienna, and they need the same salaries while they work. He says he will see what he can do, but reassures them that he will make it happen. They'll need new names. Beatrice will be La Belle Toxique, and Kat will be La Femme Panthère. Kat asks if Marvelous Martin is around, and he tells her he is there and he's resting due to his migraines. Alice escorts her up to speak with him. Martin is a mesmerist. He can sense and manipulate the mesmeric waves that resonate all around us. He describes how it's like everyone living in the ocean but are not aware that they are wet. But he can see the waves all around them, like the currents in an ocean. When he was a child, a Dr. Henry Bell took a special interest in him because he could see the waves that emanated from Martin. Martin says these waves are responsible for the paranormal-like things we see in our world, like twins who can sense each other's pain, mothers who know when they've lost a child, or even residual energy manifesting as ghosts. Kat asks if these waves can make someone invisible, and he says of course. He can manipulate people into believing all manner of things, as a hypnotist does. Kat asks if she can bring Alice by for him to check, and leaves the sickened man behind. In the room downstairs, Lorenzo is replaced by the new Madame Zora. She's a snake charmer who reveals she was actually from Hackney in London. She learned her skill from a Madame Medusa. Kat says goodbye to everyone, and her and Beatrice leave. As Beatrice asks why Clarence has a law degree in Boston but works in the circus, Kat says everyone at the circus has a history. She is a bit aggressive about reminding Beatrice that she is deadly and cannot get close to Clarence, no matter how much the two flirt. Beatrice apologizes and Kat apologizes for sounding mean. She really is just worried about everything that is happening. When they get home, they find Watson there. Sherlock is missing after going to meet with Mycroft. He wanted to give the telegram from Mrs. Norton to Sherlock, but Kat says the girls are in danger when they get to Budapest. She asks if Watson knows Dr. Raymond because he sounded familiar. Beatrice asks if she is mistaking him for Mrs. Raymond, but Kat remembers Dr. Raymond is one of the trustees of the asylum. Kat asks Watson to look into this Dr. Raymond, and Mrs. Poole tells him to stay for a tea as they discuss the girls' recent findings. When they describe going to Vienna, Beatrice laments how her plants will die in her absence. Watson suggests a watering system made up of rubber tubes. He got the idea from the Afghanistan irrigation systems. He can help her by wearing an early gas mask, which Justine interrupts to mention was invented in Baghdad and is written about in the Book of Ingenious Devices. The next day, Kat takes Alice to meet Martin, who is astonished at the mesmeric waves he sees emanating from Alice. He says he's not going on the continental tour, so he can stay back and help Alice control her powers. He just asks that Beatrice can supply the foxglove medication that helps reduces his headaches that she invented. He could use some Excedrin. My mom suffers headaches, so I get it. I know how debilitating they can be. Kat warns him not to exceed the recommended dosage, but he quickly moves on to Alice. Kat thinks to herself how she is the only practical one around there. Mary interrupts to say she isn't the only practical one, and Diana says where does she get off calling herself practical anyway? She's a writer.
But that's rude.
The next day and a half are spent readying their costumes for travel, and having Watson help setting up the watering system for Beatrice. Watson asks over dinner the night before they leave if they are ready. Catherine wonders what Beatrice will eat while they travel. Beatrice interrupts to say she can go a long time with only sunlight. Kat calls her weird, and Beatrice takes it as a compliment.
I'm a grown-ass plant.
The morning they're to depart at Charing Cross Station, Alice shows them that she has already learned how to make herself invisible. Or rather, to make them not see her. Kat's glad they're leaving because she imagines this trick getting old very fast. On the train ride to Dover, Kat bunks with Beatrice in a cabin with the window open all the way. Clarence tries smooth-talking his way into bunking with them, and Kat says again that Beatrice is deadly. On the boat ride across the English Channel, Kat thinks about how she hates boats. Meanwhile in Vienna, Mary is looking at some German magazines, waiting for Diana to finish with Freud when he calls her into his office. He finishes up Diana and she leaves so he can talk with Mary. He starts with how Diana, for all her eccentricities, is not mad. Her nightmares bring her joy. She has no qualms about speaking her mind. She loves to lie, and overall, she seems to be functioning well. It's just that the society she lives in that is constraining her. But Mary says this is the society they live in and it provides order and civility. She outright says Diana is a pain in the ass. He says how she mentally doesn't suffer from anything. She is a bit self absorbed, but she obviously loves Mary even. Mary tells him they have different mothers, but how their father was a different man when he had them. Freud tells her how they embody his theory about the primordial child and adult within everyone that humans maintain, but Diana seems to be entirely the primordial child, while Mary is the opposite. Mary realizes he is psychoanalyzing her, and he points out how Mary holds on to order and responsibility. Both sisters lie, Diana to get whatever she wants, but Mary lies to keep up a veneer of civility. He will commit Diana to the asylum, but he hopes to speak with the sisters again, because they seem to exhibit half of the human psyche each. Mary never cries, and never even considers violence as an emotional response. He realizes how they also seem to complete one another. She restrains Diana, and Diana brings out her primal raw emotions.
That was beautiful.
Tomorrow he will admit Diana, but hopes Mary will tell him about her dream someday. She plans not to, finding the practice to be so nosy. The girls interrupt to ponder how mental health is a growing study that can help any. Freud tells Hannah he will contact Irene later and they leave. The girls interrupt to ask if Mary would ever go back, and she says it wouldn't tell her anything new that she doesn't already know now after having been in Styria. Kat tells him to stop spoiling their adventure. Meanwhile, Justine and Greta are surveying the layout of the Kraken house and its surrounding. It's as impossible as they describe, but they get a room to rent at a tavern across the street. Justine is overcome with exhaustion. She doesn't have Mary's endurance to just get up and do things every day. Even socializing takes so much more out of her, and she needs time to be alone. I'm sure many can relate to that, myself included. As they ride home in a cab, Greta tells Justine a bit about how she helped Irene steal an emperor's handkerchief, but doesn't share more, and Justine, polite as always, doesn't even think of asking further. The girls interrupt to discuss how Justine is the kindest among them, because they would have been nosy. Even Mary would have at least wanted to ask. Justine tells them she does get angry, but they say she is also more likely to feel immense guilt over that anger. She almost lets it slip how she was angry at someone in Styria when they were trapped in a castle. Diana says she never feels guilty, and Mary responds that they know. Greta, after beginning to cry a bit, does volunteer more information about how Irene saved her and her sister when they were in prison after their mother died and their father was caught stealing while drunk. They escaped an abusive orphanage and resorted to stealing before being caught and sentenced to being hanged. Irene had been disguised as royalty and had forged documents to help free them. She taught them the skills of spy work and brought them into her service with other girls. They arrive at 18 Prinzjugendstrasse. Mary, Diana, and Hannah hadn't come back home yet, and neither was Irene, so Justine decides to finally read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. When Mary comes home with the others, she finds Justine crying. Justine is distraught by reading how Victor threw her body into the sea and never made her. The lie Shelley told, it brings up many feelings for Justine. She wishes she was never reanimated, but Mary tells her they would all miss her. Then she suggests they eat something, which is such a valid solution. Sometimes when we're upset, it's often a result of just being hungry or thirsty or tired, or sometimes you just have too much energy and you need to expend that energy. Irene says it's a great idea. She just got home and she's also hungry, and she tells Justine that she is obviously tired too. Irene says she believes most emotional outbursts are due to exhaustion or hunger, but she would never tell Sigmund that. The girls gather to eat and discuss the day's events. Greta is sitting on a poof, which is just a stuffed cushion, which I love, by the way. I had a friend who had one, and I love sitting on it. Top tier furniture right there. Irene wants Diana to memorize the layout of the building map before she goes in, and try to get in contact with Lucinda, but avoid unnecessary risks. Justine, Greta, and Mary will take turns keeping watch. When Irene tells Diana to dress like a hysterical teenage girl, Diana asks how is that any different from an ordinary teenage girl. Irene says that they are exactly the same thing. She needs Diana to act the part of the timid teenage girl of the times. Otherwise, they'll know something is off. Diana is happy to do some acting. Justine in particular needs rest, and Mary too, but Irene needs to speak with Mary first, so she invites her to the park. When Mary frets over her plain appearance, the others interrupt to reassure her that they admire her alert expression and how she observes the world around her. She picks up on things that others may miss. Irene takes Mary to the Belvedere, a large, ornate park. She has brought Mary here because she knows while Justine needs rest, Mary needs to move about first. The park is part of a palace complex where Irene's friend Franz Ferdinand happens to live. Apparently, Irene wants him to turn it into a place of art. Ironically enough, that's what it becomes after World War One. Funnily enough, he died before he could see it.
Oh my god, when? And how?
Irene says she wants to see how Mary is doing. Diana is content with the plan, although Irene worries she will try to save Lucinda on her own, knowing how impulsive she can be. Justine is depressed because she is speaking the language and eating the food she last did when she was Justine Moritz, when she was alive. Mary, after a bit of prodding, confesses that she is all out of sorts. Irene recognized it. Mary is used to rational order, and this adventure, while welcome, has left her with something like a hangover. While the others have their emotions to release through their monstrous abilities, like Justine with her strength, like when she breaks things, but she often feels guilty afterwards, but she still has that release valve. Mary doesn't. Irene says Mary needs a logical and controlled release valve and suggests shooting practice. Mary says it reminds her of Sherlock and asks Irene if her and him were in love at some point. She says no. Sherlock doesn't want a woman, he wants a mystery to solve. And Irene wears her heart on her sleeve. She's not that person. She thinks Mary might be someone he could be interested in. Before they talk more, they head back inside for dinner. The next morning, Mary wakes up Diana to insist she try no heroics, because if they have to rescue her and Lucinda, it's going to be really embarrassing for Diana. Which, like, I love how Mary knows how to talk with Diana to get results out of her. I'm telling you, they're sisters for real. They have a quick breakfast of pastries and coffee before Diana and Irene rush out the door to meet Sigmund. Mary and Justine go meet Greta at the hotel room. Greta updates them that she has seen suspicious activity from some men who she's seen on the street. Then Justine sees Freud arrive with Diana in a cab. Hours pass as the girls take turns watching and read books and play card games to pass the time. That night, Mary does note the suspicious men that have come and gone all day, just watching. It's boring work even into the following day.
Today's so boring that if it was a person, it'd wear a polo shirt and khaki.
The men continue to show up, clearly not soldiers or guards, but no sign from Diana all that day as well.
Meanwhile,
Diana is mad at herself for failing to find Lucinda for 2 days so far. The first night she had been able to pick the lock to her room and sneak around the first and second floor of the Krankenhaus, but no Lucinda. She does find an asylum worker's uniform and steals that. The next day she realized that Lucinda must be on the third floor. She had been able to sneak out because she was a paid patient, so she kept her clothes, which Hannah had sewn a lockpick set into. Diana planned to take up sewing to learn how to do just that. She had eaten a lunch of Knödel, an Austrian dish, and Diana is not a fan, throwing half of it out the window. They're surprised that Diana can throw out any type of food. She spends the afternoon in the common room with other women patients before being brought to her room where she rests before waking to a dinner of vegetables and more Knödel. She had been able to take stock of the security detail for the place, like the guards' routines, when they left, when they took a break. She's really good at analyzing a situation and picking it apart like Mary. But the guards on the third floor doesn't leave his post all night. Not enough time to pick the lock to the women's wing at least. On her second day after a breakfast of sausage and Knödel, socializing in the common space, Diana asks the nurse who brings her food, who speaks very little English, if Lucinda is there. She's able to get out of her that she is there on the third floor and sick somehow. When Clara the nurse comes by later with lunch of, again, Knödel, Diana pretends to mess up while eating and spill the food on Clara. She makes a big show wiping the food from Clara, swiping 4 keys from the ring that hangs at her side. That night, the second night, she sneaks out in the uniform she stole and goes to the third floor, where she uses the keys from her inventory to distract the guard.
Whoa. Stay here.
In the
I'll see
women's
what
wing, it is dark, and Diana calls to a cell for Lucinda, and a voice responds a few doors down. After shuffling about in the dark, Diana asks if she is Lucinda, and she responds with the melancholy response. No, said the figure, I am her ghost, forced to wander the earth, or sit here, as the case may be. Even without Van Helsing's direct institutionalization of Lucinda, she is evidently deep in a depressive state after his experiment. Anyway, Diana opens the door and walks in to tell Lucinda who she is and that she is with the Athena Club to rescue her. Lucinda's response is more depressing hopelessness. Too late, she said in her sepulchral voice. You should have come before I died and went to hell.
Why are you so fucking negative all the time?
What? What?
Diana sees that Lucinda looks like she is extremely malnourished, sunken cheekbones like, but Lucinda can't leave, not without her mother, who is 3 doors down from her. Lucinda says Diana has to give her mother her blood to strengthen Mrs. Van Helsing. So, in Mrs. Van Helsing's room, Diana cuts her wrist and feeds Lucinda's mother her blood, who quickly latches on. Mary interrupts to say that she is appalled that Diana did such a thing, but Diana says if she didn't act, Lucinda would still be trapped. It's Lucinda who has to pull her mother off of Diana, and then the duo hug and cry, finally reunited after much suffering. Then, Mrs. Van Helsing goes up to the iron bars on the window and pulls them apart.
Do it!
Yes!
Lucinda says they can escape that way, but Diana knows better, saying they need to cause a distraction, and has Lucinda help her search for a supply closet. There's one in the wing, and Diana uses a lamp inside to light the way as she douses some sheets and kerosene from the other lamps. She ties it to appear like someone is climbing out of the window. She also tells Lucinda to put on a worker's uniform. Then she gives matches to Lucinda and her mother and tells them to wait until she unlocks the other cells before striking the matches. She does so quickly, making sure to unlock the door to the women's wing too. She doesn't want them to be trapped. Then the women and daughter light the matches, and Diana calls out fire and ushers everyone out. Lucinda is telling the guard about the fire, and then the ladies continue to evacuate with the rest of the building as it fills with smoke. Diana is very proud of her work. Mary interrupts to remind Diana how risky it was. People could have died. Thankfully, none did, and no major damage to the structure either. Irene was able to check afterward. Mary, going on night 2 of worrying about Diana, is alerted to a fire that's begun to spread by Justine, who is keeping watch at the moment. Mary wakes Greta, who says they will need to evacuate. Mary interrupts again to ask why Diana didn't use a handkerchief to send a signal. Diana says a handkerchief is too hard to spot in the dark. Mary regrets that strangling is not in her character. The girls rush out as quickly and quietly as possible. Justine and Greta are wearing men's clothes, and Greta grabs her gun. Mary grabs her purse and her loaded revolver in it. Outside is chaotic, and it's Diana who finds them. She leads them to one of the gates where Lucinda and her mother are. Justine pries the bar open enough for them to slip through as Mrs. Van Helsing collapses. But a guard spots them and runs to the gate, but can't fit through the bars because he's much bigger than they are. So he aims his rifle. Mary draws her revolver and orders the others to run as she aims and shoots at his foot. He drops the rifle, which thankfully doesn't go off. Mary runs off as a fire truck arrives. Mary interrupts to say she had Irene check on the guard she shot. He retired with a very nice pension. Kat sarcastically says Mary should knit him a pair of socks next, and Mary asks if she should do that. Mary catches up with the others, and Greta says they have to get as far away as possible very quickly. She suggests the stables behind the hospital, but they have no carriage. That's when the beggar they saw all day offers his help. It's Irene in disguise. She leads the group to the street with the stables behind the Clankin house, but they're cornered by 7 men. The ones they kept seeing, keeping watch. The girls surround Lucinda and her mother as the men attack. Mary fires a shot at one man's shoulder, but it doesn't even faze him. She tries his heart, but again, nothing. Lucinda tells them they have to shoot them in the head to allow them to slow them down.
What's that supposed to mean?
Mary barely questions this as she shoots him in the head and he goes down finally. Diana is on the back of another trying to stab his throat. Greta shot another one, but they're still crawling to her. Lucinda is hissing at one and Justine easily snaps the neck of another. Irene fires 2 shots and complains about how they won't stay dead.
Why won't you die?
Mary shoots the man circling Lucinda, but can't aim properly at another as a man opens the window and yells for the police in German. Mary tries aiming at the man approaching Lucinda, but Lucinda leaps at him and Mary can't get a clear shot as Lucinda is thrown to the ground, the man having bitten her with fangs. He crouches over Lucinda and Mary aims to shoot until he is knocked down by Mrs. Van Helsing as she attacks him. Mary pulls Lucinda away as Justine engages in a fight with one of the men, which is surprising because of her strength. Diana tries attacking one of the men going towards Greta, and he knocks her aside and she crumples into a heap.
Don't hurt her!
Irene calls for bandages and Mary rips up her petticoat to bandage Lucinda's shoulder. Mrs. Van Helsing finishes sucking at the man's blood and crumples to the ground too. Lucinda pushes past Mary to get to her mom, who has a bloody bite wound on her neck. Mrs. Van Helsing tells her daughter in German that she loves her before closing her eyes. Lucinda is distraught, but there's little time to grieve as the attackers are taken care of, but they must escape. Justine takes Mrs. Van Helsing in her arms. Diana is back up, but has a nasty red mark. They run to the stables and Greta guarding the rear the whole time. There, Irene summons her driver Herman and helps him ready a carriage as the girls rest in a bench out front. It's almost 5 in the morning, hours since any of them had had even anything to eat. Greta says the police will be out and will investigate the escaped patients and probably find the dead men, but Lucinda says they're not dead. Irene hurries them into the carriage as the men appear down the road. As the carriage approaches the men, the horses rear up and stop as one of the attackers grabs onto the window. Irene shoots him and they're off again, moving quickly through the street. Irene asks Lucinda what those things were. She says they're demons of the night who swim in the river of blood. Justine says grief may have drove her mad. Irene theorizes it may actually be her half-starved look of madness. It's hard to think straight when you're malnourished. Mary falls asleep on the ride back to Irene's apartment and is woken by Greta. Mary walks in on the scene of Justine over Mrs. Van Helsing's body and Lucinda holding herself while the rest of them stand there. The next chapter is Lucinda's story. Irene gathers everyone in the parlor and asks Justine to place Mrs. Van Helsing in the office. She asks Greta to have Frau Schmidt bring up some coffee and pastries. Then Irene sits next to Lucinda and asks her if she can tell them what happened to her. Greta comes back with a medical kit and checks Lucinda's bandages, but only finds a small scratch. As everyone helps themselves to coffee and snacks, Lucinda begins her story by saying she swam in rivers of blood. Her story is woven with metaphor and delusions as she describes the needles used to draw her blood. Across Amsterdam, Paris, and Vienna, her father performed experiments on her. He used the blood of demons to baptize her in some kind of blasphemous alchemical ritual. She shows them the track marks left by the needles. When she tries drinking coffee, it doesn't stay down for long. Irene asks Greta to do what she asked with George after she cleans the mess. Lucinda is taken to Irene's room to rest, with Irene and Mary telling her how they're going to take her to Budapest to see Wilhelmina Murray. Irene then asks to show Mary something, so she goes with Mrs. Norton. Justine can't sleep either, so she goes with Irene and Mary to the secret office again. Irene shows them the similar track marks on Mrs. Van Helsing, as well as the fangs. She's not a beast man, nor undead like Justine. Professor Van Helsing did this somehow, using his wife and daughter as unwilling test subjects.
You raggedy bitch.
Irene sent Greta and George to get a private coach ready to take them through Austria into Hungary to Budapest. Gone before Van Helsing or whoever sent those men get the chance to find them. She sends them to sleep. Mary has dreams about bees stinging flesh before being woken up by Greta at 3 a.m. She's drawn a bath and they need to leave within the hour. It will be a 3-day trip. She washes and goes for some breakfast, noting the bruise that covers half of Diana's face. Irene walks in, telling them how Air France will take them there and stop at inns along the way to rest. She takes Lucinda to say goodbye to her mother one more time before escorting them downstairs to the carriage. She says the driver Miklos and his son Denis don't speak German, only Hungarian. Also to Mary to try and get Lucinda to eat something. With a goodbye, the Athena Club are on their way out of Vienna. They immediately fall asleep, save for Lucinda, and awaken in the afternoon in the Austrian countryside. Diana says she's hungry, so they all have a snack from the food basket, except for Lucinda. Mary tries getting her to eat, but like the coffee, it does not stay down. Justine comforts Lucinda as she cries, and it's Diana who suggests blood. She explains what happened in the Kunken house with her mother, and Mary says she will do it this time. She takes Diana's knife and cuts into her wrist to feed Lucinda, who latches on after only a moment. Mary is lightheaded. They didn't realize Lucinda would drink so much. Diana is surprisingly very defensive of Mary, as she helps her sister drink some coffee and eat some food. Lucinda looks better, but is still very morose. Feeding Lucinda blood will complicate their travels. Diana whispers to Mary, "Don't worry. If she attacks you or Justine, I'll kill her. I'll cut her throat with my little knife." Diana interrupts to say she was being nice, and Mary says she appreciated it, even then, and still does now. Beatrice and Clarence are approached by Catherine. Clarence says that they got lost talking about Italy, and how he can just get used to her poison like rain or snow. Kat reminds him that he will also become poisoned if he isn't careful. But she is there because someone from the Alchemical Society stole the telegram from Irene Norton. She hid it in a Bible in her luggage and it's missing. Catherine thinks over their travels, the dress Beatrice picked up in Paris from the House of Worth. They just gave it to her because of her beauty, but also because her wearing it in the shows would be great marketing. It's a silk green reform dress, and it does wonders in the 5 shows they did in Paris already. Kat wrote stories for the circus folk to tell to the audience, a mix of truth and fiction, and Beatrice doesn't have to kill anything. She interacts with the audience members instead, with handshakes and occasional kisses on the cheek. They're burned or stumble back to their seats as if drunk. So it's a better performance than she ever put on with Dr. Petronius, Professor Petronius. They were almost to Vienna with invitations in Budapest afterward when Kat noticed the missing telegram. She suspects Zora because they've been sharing a room on the train. Clarence says that she should ask Zora, giving her a chance to defend herself. Kat says that he should have been a judge, not a lawyer. He says they wouldn't let him be either in Massachusetts after what he did. Beatrice and Kat ask him if he wouldn't mind sharing. He tells them the year after he graduated law school. He told them how he had graduated from law school and how he had been inspired by Judge Ruffin, the first black man to get a law degree in the United States. He went to Howard and Harvard and was working with a legal aid group who helped disadvantaged groups like Black Irish Italians at the time. He went to Western Massachusetts to defend a black man accused of assaulting a white woman. She defended him, saying they were in love and planned to marry. Her father, the sheriff, accused him of the crime because she was pregnant at the time. Clarence got his client off, but the woman's brother, the deputy, pulled a gun and Clarence defended his client, but the gun went off. Clarence was tried for manslaughter but was acquitted despite the racist judge. But no one would hire him afterwards, so he got a job on a ship bound for London, worked at the docks, and found a band of Zulu performers, none of whom were actually Zulu, like him. When they disbanded, he found Lorenzo Circus and auditioned as a Zulu warrior, having had the experience. Once he's done telling his story, he offers to escort Kat to lunch service to speak with Zora, revealing that he's been with B for 3 hours. She's upset at Beatrice and Clarence for allowing their emotions to cloud their thinking. She reminds Beatrice what happened to Giovanni. Beatrice apologizes and Kat feels bad, knowing B just feels lonely, especially on a train with confined compartments. Everywhere is dangerous for others to be with her. Clarence insists that he is fine, but when he stands and stumbles and catches himself, Kat has to prevent herself from saying, "I told you so."
You know, somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it.
He tells Kat not to say it, and they find Zora in their shared cabin with Sasha, the dog boy, and an elderly woman that he knows who claims to be his grandmother. He finishes his story about being raised by the elderly woman, Frau Krahe, before Kat asks them to leave. She immediately accuses Zora of taking something, and Zora is very hurt, used to being suspect because of how racist folk were to her and her mother for being Indian in London. She leaves after dumping out her things. Clarence calls her out on her accusations. She tries saying the society has no moral compunctions, but Clarence says she should be different from them. Even Mary interrupts to say that was wrong of her. Kat tells Mary they can't always wallow in guilt though, even if she does feel bad after the fact. She asks Mary if she still feels bad about shooting Holmes that one time. Kat still goes through Zora's things, not finding the telegram. When Zora returns, she sarcastically asks if Kat meant to check her persons too, and Kat does, asking Clarence to leave. She still doesn't find it, and Zora is even more offended. She wanted them to bond because they were the only brown girls in here. She leaves to get lunch, not accepting Kat's half-hearted apology. Kat is still a cat, not used to all the complex human feelings and rituals. Even in the interruption where the girls talk, she winds up offending B. After telling Beatrice she didn't find the telegram, she goes to apologize to Clarence, who tells her she ought to apologize to Zora. Then he offers to help her and B with their luggage as the train slows down to stop in Vienna. They spend the hours disembarking from the train and setting up their show. The theater in Vienna is smaller but has electric lights. Beatrice spots an elegant lady in the crowd, and Kat thinks she is suspicious at first, but is called on stage for her performance. After the show, backstage, Kat finds Irene's telegram in her luggage. Someone put it there recently. She calls B over and tells her, smelling the telegram and finding the scent of cigarettes, especially rolled with tobacco from Russia. She says it must be Sasha. Before they can theorize more, the woman from the audience approaches them. It's Irene, and she says Mary, Justine, and Diana have gone a week. They disappeared. She says they disappeared a day out from Vienna. She needs Kat and Beatrice to tail Van Helsing, who has been in Vienna searching for Lucinda. Irene and her girls led him on a wild goose chase. B and Kat tell her they left before the telegram Irene sent arrived anyway. Irene received a telegram from Watson, who found the mole, and it was Jimmy Bucket this whole time. The Baker Street boy who had been keeping watch for them, he was seen passing information to a Lady Crow, and Holmes is still missing. She tells them to pack while she speaks to Lorenzo since they will be leaving early. As they pack their things, Clarence comes in and Kat tells him she suspects Sasha. Irene comes back, happy to meet a fellow American, and tells him that they can resume their acts in Budapest. And in the meantime, she offered Hannah and Greta as replacements until then. They're sharpshooters, and he accepted them. Van Helsing has been in Vienna 5 days. He's leaving for Budapest tonight. She wants them to follow him as he is their only lead. Plus, they need to meet Mina in Budapest. She invites them to her apartment to trade information before they depart on the Orient. Hannah and Greta can keep an eye on Sasha, find out who his contacts are. She invites Clarence along to dinner as well, since Kat and Bee trust him. She mentions it'd be nice to talk to a fellow American. Her father fought for the Union Army. As the girls finish packing, Bee points out that Irene is missing her jewelry. She may have given it to Lorenzo in exchange for their leaving so soon. At Irene's place, she informs them how she hopes Van Helsing can give a clue as to the girl's location, somewhere in the direction of Graz. She says she has learned that the driver, Miklos Ferenc, has unpaid bills in Vienna, so someone may have bought him out. As Irene catches them up on Lucinda's rescue, Clarence voices his concern, and Beatrice has to remind him that they're monsters and would actually have to protect him. Afterwards, he quietly eats his schnitzel. Beatrice has some Austrian green goop, and Kat has a juicy rare steak. Clarence decides to stay and see them off at the train station, while Irene takes him to get a disguise for Catherine and Beatrice. She shows them her secret office full of poisons and weapons. She allows them to choose weapons. Kat chooses a Webley revolver like Holmes, but small caliber. Beatrice doesn't pick a gun, but is persuaded to take a stiletto knife and a leather sheath. Hannah comes in with nun outfits for them. Irene could only get a shared cabin, otherwise it would raise suspicion, so Kat will have to take walks in the hallway every hour for the 6-hour ride so she doesn't succumb to Beatrice's poison. Kat doesn't like having to be a nun. She has religious trauma from Moreau's proselytizing on the island. If you read the Island of Dr. Moreau, you know he basically saw himself like a god to the beastmen. Clarence feels weird the whole ride over to the station. Beatrice interrupts to say she went to confession afterwards, and that they shouldn't have to do what's wrong to do what's right. Kat says they do sometimes. At the train station, Clarence hugs them goodbye and kisses Beatrice. He has blisters on his lips from it. They talk in their cabin about the others, worrying about what the society would do with the girls who were experimented on. But Kat feels confident that any situation Diana is in, she can introduce chaos into. So this is where I'm ending the recap for now. I will be back soon to recount the Athena Club's adventures in Budapest. I'll reserve my thoughts for part 2 because a lot of my thoughts are still kind of half-baked, and our journey is only half complete anyway. Just know we have yet to meet my favorite characters, who I'm excited to introduce you to, outside of the Athena Club, of course. See you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!